All right, now we're learning now there's three of the last blessings, the later blessings of the morning blessings. And they're very unusual. We're blessing, thank you, God. Blessed are you, God. God, may you be revealed. Baruch atah, that you did not make me a goy, you did not make me an eved, and you did not make me an isha. As we're thanking God that he didn't make us a non-Jew, and he didn't make us a servant, and he didn't make us a, we're talking about a servant, an eved kanani, it's called. And he didn't make us a woman. First of all, we'll talk about exactly what this means in a moment, but at first it seems a bit strange. You know, why are we thanking God that he didn't make us a woman? Is it that bad about making that? I understand that women, at least our custom in Chabad, is they just don't make this blessing. But there's some places that they make the blessing, Sha'asali Karatzono, that God, you made me according to your will. There's explanations about that also. But let's just talk about simply what this means. The simple meaning is that we're thanking God that he made us, he created us to be men, because men have more commandments than women do. Men have more commandments. According to Jewish law, all commandments, with certain exceptions, all commandments that deal with time, that are only done at certain times of the day, times of the year, all of those commandments are done only by men. Women don't do commandments which are connected to time. And if they do, they only do it because of from the rabbis, or because there's a special sentence that said they should do it. That's all the positive commandments. All the negative commandments, of course, they must do. Women have to keep Shabbat, and women have to keep all of the negative commandments, even though they deal with certain times. But all the commandments that are positive, like putting on tefillin, like a prayer, lulav and etrog, tzitzit are only done in the daytime. All of the other commandments which are time-bound, women don't do. So therefore, we're thanking God that God did not make us into a woman. And even more so, that God did not make us into a slave, a non-Jewish slave, has basically the same commandments as a woman do, with certain exceptions. And also a non-Jew, a goy has no commandments at all, unless he takes on himself the 7 Noahide commandments, in which case he still remains a goy, he still remains a non-Jew. But on the other hand, he accepts on himself the 7 Noahide commandments, which are not really commandments in the normal sense of the word. In other words, a non-Jew does not make blessings on the commandments that he does. According to some, a non-Jew is supposed to pray, he's supposed to honor his parents, he's supposed to give charity. The 7 commandments for the non-Jews are only negative. That's only the negative ones, but there's positive ones also. There's a Gemara in Chulin that says that the non-Jews have 30 commandments altogether, and it lists, there's different places, especially in the Encyclopedia Talmudit by Rabbi Zevin. Also, it lists in the back, what are the 30, according to different opinions, what are the 30 commandments of the non-Jews. But suffice it to say that we don't understand exactly how precious the commandments are. And that's why we're giving these 3 blessings in a simple way. This is the simple meaning of these 3 blessings. That we're thanking God that we are men, and men have so many more commandments than women do, and that slaves do, and that non-Jews do. So many more commandments. Therefore, we're thanking God because we can connect to him with the commandments. I think we've said it before, but we'll say it again. What exactly does it mean, the commandments? Why should we be so happy with the commandments? Now, in Hebrew, the word for commandment is very similar to the word of connection. Mitzvah, from the language expression of tzavta, a tzevet. The word mitzvah means connection, that God is connecting us to him, and he's connecting himself to us when we use our free will to do the commandments, because the essence of man is free will. So when we use our free will to do the commandments, in other words, we use our free will to make our body and our speech and our thought and our hearts to be in tune with what God wants. For instance, one of the commandments is to love God, to fear God. This is our heart. A commandment is to say the Shema, to say the certain blessings after eating. Is that using our mouth? The commandments with action, putting on tefillin, tzitziot, etc. Those commandments, all those commandments, are really connections, how we connect ourselves to God. And it's not by accident that the number of commandments exactly corresponds to the spiritual, if you want to call it, the limbs of a person, the limbs and the blood vessels. It says that there are 365 blood vessels in a person. I've never seen them enumerated. And it also says there's 248 limbs in the body. I've never seen them enumerated either, even though there's another place where it says that there's 248 bones in a person's body. It's in Oelot, but that's not what it's referring to, because the heart and the brain are also these limbs, which they don't have any bones. However it is, there are exact number of limbs and blood vessels as there are positive and negative commandments. And that's one of the meaning that man is created in the image of God. Namely, that when we do the commandments, we manifest God in the world, in our bodies. That's the connection that we're talking about. That's this idea of the connection. So that's why we're thanking God, even if we have one more commandment than these, other than a woman or the servant, a non-Jew. Even if we have one more commandment, it's enough to give thanks to God about. But if we think a little bit deeper about this is the simple meaning. But everything in the Torah has a simple meaning and a deeper meaning, and then deeper than that, and deeper and deeper. Something like a human being. A human being has the skin, and underneath the skin he has his bones and his innards, and inside of that there's the soul, and inside of that there's a person's personality and what he wants and what he likes. So it is also with the commandments, there's deeper and deeper levels. That's what's called the secrets of the Torah, the Kabbalah. So it's asked by a lot of people, according to the Kabbalah, it says there's a book called the Sidur of the Shelah. And also the first Rebbe of Chabad also brings it in a book called Mea Sha'arim. And they bring from a person called the Ramak and from the Arizal, from Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, that at first glance, these blessings should only be said once in your lifetime. We're thanking God that he didn't create us to be a non-Jew, or to be a woman, or to be a slave. So when did God make us that we're not a non-Jew, that we're not a Gentile or a man, or that he made us into a man? When did he do this? When we were created. So really, why say the blessing every day? Why say it every day? It's not every day God did not make me a non-Jew. God refrained from making me into a woman. I was already created what I was when I was born, and that's what I am. So why do we make this blessing every day? So there are several answers to this. One is that we're giving thanks every day, constantly, to how we were created, how God created us in the beginning. That when God created us in the beginning, it was a very big miracle, and we have to not forget that miracle. Like we said, that when we started off and said Modeh Ani, when we started these classes, that Modeh Ani, we're thanking God that we woke up in the morning, because one wakes up in the morning is like a new creation. And from that we can realize that everything in the world is being created constantly brand new. But just to take that in a small way, every day that a person wakes up, it's as though he's being created anew, like the first day of his life. like a saying that they say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. So we give thanks to God for everything that we have in the beginning of the day. And if you think about it, the question is exactly the opposite. Not that we should make this blessing only once when we're created, and we're making it too many times every day. But in a way, we're not making it enough, because every second God is creating us brand new. But we really feel it only when we wake up in the morning. And wake up in the morning, that's supposed to set the tone for the rest of the day, that we're always thanking God for what we are. Because God is making us what we are every moment. So that's more of a psychological way of understanding it. But according to the Kabbalistic ways, is it could be that a person, when he goes to sleep, according to his deeds, according to his actions, his thoughts, his speech, what he has done, it could be that there will be connected to him the soul of a non-Jew. Let's just take this blessing now. We'll talk about the servant and the woman. We'll talk about that later. But let's talk about this idea of the soul of a non-Jew. What exactly is the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew? What is the difference? There's a story that's told, a Chassidic story, that there was a Rabbi Levi Yitzchok of Berditchev, very great rabbi. He lived around the first time of the first Rebbe of Chabad. In fact, they were very good friends. And their children, grandchildren, got married. And the story goes that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, he would come to the synagogue every day and he would make the morning blessings. Now we in Chabad, we have the custom that we make the morning blessings at home before we start any of the other prayers. You wash your hands, you say Modeh Ani first, you wash your hands, and then you say all the blessings. Or more exactly, we wash our hands in the morning, and then we go to the bathroom, and then after that we wash our hands again a second time, and then we make all the morning blessings, and then we go to pray in the shul, in the synagogue. But there's a lot of Jews that don't do that. A lot of Jews, they make all of the blessings when they go to the synagogue. All the blessings. They don't make any blessings at home. On the way, it's part of the prayers in the morning. And so it was also the custom of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of the city of Berditchev. He would stand in front of the congregation and he would make all the blessings. Sometimes another one of the congregation would make all the blessings and start the prayers. But once in a while he would do it, and it so happened that one day he came in very happy and he made all of the blessings. Everybody, of course, was very happy to hear him make the blessings. They were happy to learn from every movement that he made, every word that he said. But they noticed that he forgot this blessing, Schelo Assani Goi, that you did not make me a non-Jew. And they didn't know how to exactly to tell him, because he was a very great rabbi, and it was impossible that he forgot. But on the other hand, they saw that he did forget. Nobody made the mistake. They all talked to each other, and they said they agreed that no one heard him make this blessing. So they went to him and they said, "Honorable Rabbi, we love you and you're our leader, and maybe you can explain why, but it seems to us that you forgot to make this blessing." He said, "I didn't forget." So, but nobody heard it. He said, "Of course nobody heard it, because I woke up this morning and I was so happy that I'm a Jew that I made the blessing first thing in the morning at home." It wasn't his custom to make the blessings at home, but that blessing he made at home, and that made him happy the whole day. What was there for him to be happy about? What's such a happy thing about being a Jew? It says that a similar thing by King David, that King David, it said one day he was found in the bathhouse and he didn't have any commandments. And in the bathhouse, when you're naked, you can't do any commandments. And he looked at his circumcision, that he had a circumcision, of course, which is the thing which you can see when you're in the bathhouse. And he was tremendously happy. He said, happy, sason, is Mila. So he said he was very happy that God, you you made me into a Jew, and that I have this covenant with you. What was so happy about that? What is so happy about being a Jew? So that's the sort of underlying theme of all of these classes, the secret of happiness. In general, what is happiness? What really is happiness? As the psychiatrist Dr. Viktor Frankl said many, many times, that happiness is, of course, very essential to life, but happiness is a thing that must ensue. It cannot be pursued. He was sort of poking fun at what it says in America, the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that happiness cannot be pursued. You cannot run after happiness. Happiness is a thing that must ensue. It has to come from something meaningful that a person does, something very valuable, something that's very precious to a person, valuable to a person when he does it, as it makes him happy. So, of course, there's many different levels of value that people have. Some people, when their soccer team wins, they're tremendously happy. Right? They run in the streets, and to the point where they're just so happy they can't contain themselves. They destroy things and wreck things from just tremendous happiness and joy that their team won the soccer championship. Well, that's one type of happiness. I think we can say safely that this is a very simple and basic and semi-meaningless type of happiness. But nevertheless, it is happiness. There was a tension, we can call it a false tension, built up by these two teams battling each other, and sort of a vicarious feeling of victory when one of the teams, when my team wins, even though that I really didn't participate in this at all. But nevertheless, there is a certain value, a certain tension that was there, even though it was false and not really true, but it was still existed, and happy. Another type of happiness is when a person wins the lottery, makes a lot of money, he's very happy. Suddenly his troubles are gone. He gets something very valuable. The more money he makes, the more value that there is. Or if a person gets a job, his future is more secure. He feels that people value him. Now we're getting into more meaningful types of meaning and happiness. Let's take one of the most standard, common types of happiness is a wedding. Everybody at a wedding is happy. So here we can see clearly many different levels. One person can be happy because he found himself a nice girl, or the woman friend found himself a nice man, or she has money, he has money, or they have security, or they have whatever pleasure. There's a deeper type of happiness where the people actually love each other, and they love each other, and because of that, they're happy that they have found each other. And of course, there's the future, that they can have children, they can build a family together, they can make a new world together. Now, this is also a type of happiness, but it's a happiness that ensues. It comes from something else, which is not the case of, let's say, being happy because of taking drugs. A person takes drugs, the drugs don't give him a reason. Maybe they give him a cause to be happy. They cause him to laugh. They cause him to be wild, but it's not really type of a happiness. Genuine happiness comes when there's something that's genuinely meaningful and genuinely valuable. A lot of times people, they win the lottery. We've spoken about this a lot of times. The more money they win, the happier, of course, they are in the beginning, but the more meaningless it starts to become. What can you really do with money? Unless they give it away, some of it to charity, or they do meaningful things with it. But generally speaking, the happiness is very, very short-lived, which is not the case of a wedding. If a person really appreciates the other, then the wedding there can be happiness until the last day of their lives. And when the beautiful looks and even the health, whatever, goes away, as there can still be the same love as there was in the beginning, because there's something that's really valuable there, something that's not determined by the physical, and sometimes not even determined by the emotional. I mean, there's people that, God forbid, the husband or the wife has disease. Nevertheless, they love each other. The love is still there. You can love somebody who's not even alive. That's a different type of a happiness, a type of a meaning that the happiness ensues from, comes out of. And that's what we have to be happy about, that we're a Jew. A Jew has a special connection, a special responsibility to the creator of the universe. I think I've told you this story before, and I'm sorry, I just don't remember which stories that I did tell and which stories that didn't, but I'll tell this story again. At least I don't remember. I was once on a plane on an Air France flight. This must have been easily 20 years ago. And when I'm on a flight, I stand up, I take out a pair of tefillin, and I ask people if they're Jewish and if they would like to put on. It's an Air France flight from Israel, or I also took Air France going back to Israel. From New York, I went to see Lubavitcher Rebbe for the holidays. So figuring that it's from Israel, there must be Jews on the flight, and going back to Israel, there's probably Jews on the flight. So I stood up and I asked people if they're Jewish. So it sort of got happy, people were joking around, and I was joking around with them. And then ended up that one person told me, I'm not Jewish, but he is. They pointed to somebody who is some well-known singer in France. And I asked him if he's Jewish. Yes, and he put on tefillin, and this was a big sensation by everybody. And finally, a woman came, and with two men behind her. And this woman said, she spoke English, and the two men did not speak English. And she said, I'd like to ask you a question. Can I ask you? I said, yes. She said, what are you doing with these boxes? And I said, this is a commandment of the Jews, and it just shows that God is not in heaven. He's also on earth. I had to think fast because I didn't really know what to tell her. But all of a sudden, it just popped into my mind. These are commandments of God to show that God is not just in heaven, he's on the earth. And then one of them nudged her and said, the man standing behind her, and he whispered something, and she said no, and she whispered again. And she said, my two friends, they would like to, if I would ask you a question. I said, please, any question you want. So she said, what is the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew? Why do you only do these commandments with non-Jews? With Jews? Why do you avoid the non-Jews? So I said to her, all of a sudden I got this idea in my mind. I said, according to Judaism, the non-Jew, the Gentiles, are the highest thing in creation. They're above animals. They can change the world. They can do mathematics. They can change. They can invent things and cure things and improve things. They're highest thing in the world. Highest thing in creation are the non-Jews. And the Jews, they're the lowest part of the Creator. They're the representatives of the Creator in the world. But the non-Jews are relevant to the creation. They're the highest in creation. And we, Jews, we're the highest part of the Creator. And because the Creator wants there to be a good creation, that's why he made the Jews. God cares about the creation, so he put the Jews here. So she told it to them, and they were very happy, and they shook my hand, and they kissed me, and this. I don't know, maybe she could be that she just said, this guy's out of his mind, shake his hand and kiss him, let's get out of here. But I don't think so. So they were happy. So suddenly I realized that if you tell a non-Jew what a Jew is they're very happy, because it's true. A Jew is a part of the Creator. In the Tanya, it says, the second chapter of the Tanya, Chelik Eloka Mimal Mamash, that every Jew has an additional soul, a second soul. A non-Jew has a normal soul, a spiritual soul, a soul that looks for truth. But a Jew has, in addition to that, he has a second soul. And this second soul is connected to God. It wants God. It wants godliness. It doesn't necessarily want anything that's practical. The first Jew was Abraham. God told him, take your son and kill him, sacrifice him, and he did it. It's killing your son is the opposite of Judaism, especially to Abraham, and especially it was the promises that God gave to Abraham that Yitzchak, his son Yitzchak, was going to be the new founder of Judaism, and from him would come children like the stars of the sky and the sand on the sea. And they were going to get the land of Canaan. The land of Israel was going to be given through Yitzchak, not through Yishmael and not even through Esav, but through Yitzchak would come. Yitzchak's son Yaakov. And before Yitzchak got married, he was already 37 years old. God told Abraham to take him and sacrifice him. This is the opposite of normal intelligence, opposite of God's commands. You can't kill people. Opposite of God's promises. It's the opposite of Abraham's nature, was to be loving to everyone, and especially to his son Yitzchak. But nevertheless, Abraham did it. Why? To show us that what is a Jew? Abraham was the first Jew. What is a Jew? A Jew cares only about the Creator. But it happens to be that the Creator only cares about the world. The Creator wants this world to be a good one. But in order for it to be a good one, people have to not care about themselves. And the only ones that can teach them to do that are the Jews. So it's a very difficult job, and not all the Jews get it, but eventually all of them will. That's the idea of the Mashiach, that he'll come and change the priorities of all mankind. As I think we've also said before, that Moses, took the Jews out of Egypt. God, through Moses, took the Jews out of Egypt, and Mashiach will take the Egypt out of the Jews. And what does it mean, this idea of Egypt? When God took us out of Egypt, he separated us from not just politically Egypt, but he separated us from the whole entire creation. He made us his people, his servants. Like Moses went into Paro, and God said, go into Paro and tell him, B'ni B'chori Israel, my sons, my firstborn, my son, my firstborn is Israel. The Jewish people are called the son of God. When did this happen? When they started going out of Egypt. When they left Egypt, as soon as they left Egypt at Mount Sinai, they became the servants of God. Maybe another time we'll talk about that, but the servants means that we can do God's commandments. We can be like Abraham. We can listen to the commandments of God, even above understanding. That's the essence of a Jew. The essence of a Jew is to be connected to the Creator of the whole universe. The Creator of the whole universe, he creates all the lotteries and all the victories and all the love and all the wonderful things that make us happy. It's even the happiest thing is to be connected to the Creator. But in order to do that, we have to sort of disconnect ourselves from our own logic and our own understanding. And that's what a non-Jew is. A non-Jew is, in essence, he's connected to his own understanding, his own logic, his own feelings, his own emotions. And that's why the non-Jews have made up so many different religions. And none of them really got it right. None of them really got the point. I mean, God, the Creator of the universe, really did appear to the Jews, all of the Jews. No other religion even claims that. God really did tell the Jews why he created the world. He really did tell the Jews why the non-Jews exist. So the non-Jews are not, if you want to call it in a normal way, they're not so bad. They're creations of God. It's our job to enlighten them, to educate them to what's called the 7 Noahide commandments. But on the other hand, they're not Jews. They're not Jews. So according to the first Rebbe of Chabad in this book called Mea Sharim, these 3 blessings, we're thanking God for not making us a non-Jew, a Goi, a Gentile, and a servant and a woman. This refers to what's called Klipat Noga. I don't know if any of you have heard these terms before, and I can't hear you back, so I can't hear any feedback. But if you look at the Tanya, and maybe we'll learn a little bit of Tanya, but it's written in English also. I think it's translated in German also. Sure, certainly it is. And there it explains in the first 8 chapters of the Tanya what the difference between a Jew is and a non-Jew, and that this difference between a Jew and a non-Jew is expressed even in physical things like food, animals, things you can use, stolen money, not stolen money, permissible things to eat, not permissible things to eat. things which according to the Torah are not permissible to eat. For instance, a person slaughters a chicken to eat, and he doesn't know how to slaughter properly. When he slaughters, his knife has a chip in it, or he delays in slaughtering, or any one of the 5 things that disqualify the ritual slaughtering, is that chicken is forbidden. It's like pork. And if a person eats it, it's a whole different level of reality and a whole different type of a confusion which is caused in the world. On the other hand, if a person slaughters this chicken properly and prepares it properly, salts it or roasts it, whatever he does, and he eats it properly, makes a blessing, and uses then that energy can be used in a Jewish way. So not only is a Jew different, if you want to call it actually, physically, if we could only have eyes to see, but let's say for our purposes spiritually, totally spiritually, than a non-Jew. But not only that, all the things that the Jew uses are also totally different from those things that a non-Jew can use. A non-Jew can eat pork, he can eat a chicken that died on its own. There's no problem. So in a way, there are what's called shells. Shells. The whole world is a big shell. The whole world covers over God. But there's 2 types of shells in general. There's one type of a shell which is called impossible to work with, to refine. That's called klippa tuma, klipot tmeot, to be exactly. And there is another type of klippa, type of shell, which is called nature, or in the language of the Kabbalah, it's called klippat noga. It's called shining shells. And these shining shells have the ability to be elevated in some way. And that, in a way, are these 3 things, the non-Jew and the slave and the woman. We'll talk about the women later, but the non-Jew can be elevated. What does it mean, elevated? That if a non-Jew is taught the 7 Noahide commandments, then he can be totally in tune with who he is. In the same way the Jew can be totally in tune with what he is. And the same thing is also with an animal. It says that in the future, for instance, that a lion will be like a cow. Why does it say a lion will be like a cow? Why not just say the lion will be permissible? The lion will be like a cow means that a lion will have use, like a cow has use. Beautiful mimer of the Lubavitcher Rebbe on Passover. It takes a sentence by the prophet Micha. Like the days when you left Egypt, I will show you big miracles. And it says over there that in the future redemption, the thing will be miracles that we've never seen before. If all of nature will change its tone. So in a way, that's the idea of klippat noga. In other words, everything can be elevated somehow or other. Some things won't be able to, but that's what the first Rebbe Chabad said, that these blessings, Schelo Assani Goi, God did not make me a Gentile, that this is talking about the transformation that we can make now for the future redemption, which is going to be by Mashiach, that the non-Jews will actually come to realize and to see the oneness of God, just like the Jews did on Mount Sinai, something like that. So that's the whole idea of Lo Assani Goi. We're thanking God for, number one, what God made us in the beginning of our creation, but we're thanking Him every day for it, because every day we're like a new creation. Also, we're thanking God that in the nighttime did not cling to us a impure spirit of a non-Jew that is not essentially concerned with serving God, or he's concerned with being a good person, being a nice person, but not concerned with serving God like a Jew is. We're giving thanks to God that we have more commandments than a non-Jew does. And therefore, we're saying thank you that you did not make me a non-Jew. And finally, by means of this blessing, we actually make an elevation into the non-Jews of the world. Schelo Assani Goi means that right now I'm not God, you did not make me into a non-Jew, but there's something good about being a non-Jew. It's a creation of God, and it's what we call klipat noga. There's something that can be elevated in the non-Jew, and that's what we do when we make this blessing. It's not such a new thing, because it says that before God gave the Torah to the Jews, that he went around to all the nations of the world and asked them if they wanted to get the Torah, and when they said no, and they refused, so that really, if you want to call it, softened them up spiritually, that they would be able one day to receive the 7 Noahide commandments. And that is our generation. That's the Lubavitcher Rebbe said many times. Our generation is the one when the non-Jews will accept the 7 Noahide commandments. And if you look near the end of the Rambam, I think it's in the end of the 9th chapter, but I'm not sure. You have to look. 9th chapter, 10th chapter. It says, the 10th chapter of the Laws of Kings, right at the end of the Rambam. It says that all of the non-Jews will realize the sheker nachalu aboteim. They'll realize that all of the religions were just man-made and that they're lies. They're not really true. God really never said all these things that all these religions claim. Hundreds and hundreds of religions, and they're all wrong. Because God never told anybody to do that. This is the way for the non-Jews. It could be they were inspired people, and there could be a lot of good came out of these religions, that it kept people in a spiritual mode, that people didn't just become animals, like we see with how the Nazis and how the communists and other, they just became animals. Total. Not that people didn't do animalistic things through religion also, but nevertheless, to believe in God, they said that the Baal Shem Tov would not get into a wagon if the driver was a non-Jew, if he didn't cross himself first. You know how they do, they make a thing on themselves. If he didn't, because it shows that he believed in something. A person that doesn't believe in anything, as he can just do anything that pops into his mind. So that's the blessing, Schelo Assani Goi, that we're thanking God that even though that being a non-Jew is not that bad, but nevertheless we're thanking God that we're Jews and that we have the connection to the creator of the universe that can add even to the non-Jews. And next week we'll talk about how it can add even to the servants, and then finally how it can add even to the level of being of the women, of being a woman. Just one, I'll just say one last thing, the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. There's a beautiful mimer, a beautiful Chassidic discourse in a book which is called Derech Mitzvotecha, and there he explains the mitzvah of eating matzah. Jews ate matzah. And he said that when a Jew eats matzah, it's called in the book, the Zohar, matzah is called the food of faith. And why is it called the food of faith? Because it actually increases Jewish faith when a Jew eats it. How does it do that? There's 3 things involved. First of all, it's a commandment. Second of all, it's made from wheat. And third of all, it's not leavened. It doesn't raise up. The fact that it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment, it was a commandment that the Jews had to do when they left Egypt. They left Egypt. Egypt was a tremendously spiritually developed country. It says that even young school children had the power to take sticks. Sticks are vegetable, and turn them into snakes, which are animal. People can't do that nowadays. So the Egyptians were tremendously spiritual people. And nevertheless, God took them out of Egypt. How did he do that? He changed the Jews, their mentality, by giving them matzah. It was a commandment for them to eat matzah. Why did God choose this type of food for a commandment? Because it's made from wheat, and it says that wheat gives a person awareness. It's a Gemara in Brachot, and the Gemara in Talmud Brachot, that according to one opinion, the tree of knowledge of good and bad that Adam ate from was wheat, because it says that wheat gives a child, a baby, knowledge that he can recognize his father and mother. It says a baby can't call his mother and father until he tastes wheat or some sort of grain. And third, it has to be unleavened. It has to be with no raising up. It has to be true. What there is, what you see, that's all that there is. Not bread you buy in the store now. It's all puffy and it's really only a very small amount of actually substance that there. Most of it is raised up and but it has to be true. It has to be truthful. These three elements is what is unique about Jewish faith. A non-Jew, there he explains, believes that God created the world a long time ago, that God enlivens the world, that God is greater than the world, that he directs the world, but the world and God are sort of two different things. God is like the soul inside of the world. But the Jew believes that's called in the language of Chassidic, Kabbalah, it's called Mamaleh Kol Omen, that God fills the world. But matzah, when a Jew eats matzah, he gets unique Jewish faith, which is called Sovev Kol Omen, namely that God is much, much, much higher than just being the spiritual soul of the world. God is much above the spiritual. And I'll end up with a story, another story, which you'll have to forgive me if I told you the story also, but I'm sorry, I don't remember. That once I was in New York, it was my son's bar mitzvah, my middle son's bar mitzvah, and we were in New York, and we were approached by 3 missionaries. The same thing as in the flight on France flight, but these people were missionaries. There's a woman standing in front and 2 men standing in back, and the woman said, "Can I ask you a question?" And then she started talking about her religion. So I said, "Listen, I've heard all these things that you've got to say about the religion. Let me just ask you a question." I said, "I'm really not interested in what you have to say. And I've heard it before, and I'm totally not interested. But I would like to ask you a question. Do you know the Bible?" She said, "Of course we know the whole Bible, right?" And she said, "Yes." So I said, "Good. And can you answer this question? One question. Is God spiritual?" So they looked at each other and they thought I was crazy. What type of a question is that? She said, "What?" I said, "Is God spiritual?" So I could see in her eyes she was thinking, well, these Jews, they probably believe that God is like in the box or in the Bible, in the scrolls or something. She thinks that she thought the Jews are really much more, how do you say, mundane than I ever dreamed of. So she said, "Of course God is spiritual. Of course." And the 2 men standing behind them, they're shaking their heads. "Yes, yes." And I said, "Well, I'm really surprised that you don't know the first sentence of the Bible." She said, "We know the whole Bible." So I said, "Well, what's the first sentence?" "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." I said, "There you go." So she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "God created the heavens and the earth. The earth is all the physical. The heavens, that's all the spiritual worlds. And God created that. In other words, God is not spiritual. He creates the spiritual." So I saw they were a little bit confused. So I said, or in simple language, our God, the Jewish God, creates your God. And they just turned and walked away. But this is the fact, it's true. We say, Kol Elohei Amim Elilim, Vashem Shemayim Osa, that all the other gods are creations, and our God created the heavens, created all the spiritual levels. And that's what we should be thinking about when we say, Schelo Assani Goi, that we are connected to the essence of God, the essence of the Creator, and our job is to bring the Creator and reveal Him in the creation, to reveal the whole creation, how much God loves every detail of creation, and that He's creating everything constantly. Time is also a creation. And that's the job of the Jews. The job of the Jews is to link between the Creator and the creation. And in order to do that, we have to not let the creation get us down. The creation, as we know too well, can make a person depressed, can make a person angry, can make a person, cheat, lie, full of lust, addiction, aggression, depression. That's what the creation can make us do. And if we're connected to something a little bit above the creation, and especially if we're connected to the Creator, as then the world becomes a practical place. The world can get along really fine without any addictions, without any depression, without all these terrible things. The world will get along just wonderfully without these things. And the way to do it is to be connected to the Creator, and the only ones that can really do that and show the world what it means to be connected to the Creator are the Jews. Therefore, we're happy that we say Schelo Assani Goi, that you did not make me into a non-Jew. God bless everybody. I would love it if there were some questions. You can call me up, and maybe next week we'll have to work on this a little bit earlier and get the audio portion, at least my receiving part